We are recording now.
Record. I'd like to just read an excerpt. I know our custom here is to, have a handout and people take turns reading from the handout, but at least personally, I found that with Zoom, that's a little tedious because you have to share a screen, and I just like seeing everybody more than anything else. So I have a brief quote of about a paragraph from the Journal of George Fox. This is chapter 10. He says, I was moved of the Lord to recommend the setting up of 5 monthly meetings of men and women in the city of London, besides the women's meetings and the quarterly meetings, to take care of God's glory and to admonish and exhort such as walk disorderly or carelessly and not according to the truth. For whereas friends had only quarterly meetings, now truth was spread and friends were grown more numerous, I was moved to recommend the setting up of monthly meetings throughout the nation. And the Lord opened to me what I must do, and how the men's and women's monthly and quarterly meetings should be ordered and established in this and in other nations, and that I should write to those where I did not come to do the same. So I think it's interesting that we have an early testimony that it occurred to friends to have quarterly meetings, meetings for business, before it occurred to them to have monthly meetings for business. And I think we often think of quarterly meetings as almost an afterthought. At least in our quarter, I think that's been the case. I just wanted to leave us with that thought in mind, that at one point the quarterly meeting was seen as one of the central aspects of at least a Quaker business. The other thing that I'd like to just talk about for a little bit, and then I want to open it up to some discussion and some reflection, is that South Central Yearly Meeting has 3 quarterly meetings in it. There's Bayou Quarterly Meeting, which is the eastern end of things, as the name implies. Starts at Houston and on Live Oak and on east into Louisiana, and then there's Arkansas Oklahoma Quarterly Meeting, self-explanatory name, and then there's Cielo Grande Quarterly Meeting, which is our quarterly meeting, and that includes, and someone please correct me if I miss a meeting, but because there's 1 or 2 that I don't think are functioning now, like the Rio Grande Valley quarterly monthly meeting, I think, has been laid down. But we are Hill Country Meeting, Coastal Bend Meeting, the San Antonio Friends Meeting of Austin, Dallas Meeting, and then never formally, and Georgetown Worship Group, and then never formally affiliated with us, but they get invited and come when we have quarterly meeting sessions, is Fort Worth. Did I miss anyone in there that those of you who are familiar with this can think of? I'm just kind of speaking from memory here. So,
is there an active Waco worship?
No. Well, we have heard from Waco over the years, but not that I know of. That would be a very worthwhile thing to check into. I think some of us may still have some contacts with the people who are doing that. I have an odd back connection through my family and friends in Omaha, Nebraska, to some people in Waco who were involved in that. There are other ways too. Probably of checking up on that. So.
Waco?
Yeah, Waco.
Very active, quite active.
Okay, well, good. We should be reaching out to them, I think.
Oh, I don't. That was weird.
So, at any rate, I'll just compare. Just as a matter for inspiration, not as a matter for shaming, but the relative activity of the various quarters in South Central yearly meeting. The Bayou quarterly meeting gets together pretty regularly, about twice a year. And Arkansas, Oklahoma meets 3 times a year often, I understand. The term quarterly, of course, implies that you get together 4 times a year. But of course, there's representative meeting for the whole yearly meeting, and there's the yearly meeting sessions. So that kind of takes up some bandwidth. Our quarterly, on the other hand, has had some challenges meeting even once a year. And I think the last time we met as a quarter was in San Antonio in fall of 2017. Okay. And we had gotten a lot of momentum going and gotten a plan and gotten scheduled to have quarterly meeting this spring. And guess what? It was the first weekend of the general quarantine in San Antonio and Austin. And so at the last minute, it had to be canceled. Greg, who's on the call here from San Antonio and was an attender in Austin for a number of years. Greg was very, very involved in getting that together. I'll just maybe make one other observation that, like I said, we're very happy that Greg got involved, because it was very much a case of the usual suspects getting together and talking about how to get the quarterly going. And so getting some people who were getting more newly involved was really, really a good deal for us. We also had a lot of involvement from some people in Dallas and others in San Antonio. Almeda Smith, the co-clerk of Dallas, was also very involved in this effort. So Greg, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any observations about our efforts this year to get quarterly meeting going, which unfortunately got kind of spiked by the advent of the virus? Do you have any things you wanted to throw in there on that?
Well, it was a long story, as those of y'all on this call who were part of that planning committee will know. I mean, I was also pretty excited about the momentum that we had. I was pleased to really, I mean, my hope at the outset, volunteering to be part of our sort of ad hoc committee in San Antonio, to participate in quarterly planning and to do the planning for the hosting for that meeting. One of my major sort of goals for that process was to just strengthen the relationship between Austin and San Antonio Friends meetings. And I kind of thought of, at least from my perspective, knowing that that is going to be different from the seasoned friends who've been going to quarterly meetings and remember what Cielo Grande quarterly was like before, I thought of the likelihood and possibility of people from other meetings coming to be sort of a bonus, but that the most important part of that process to me was to try to establish a stronger relationship between our 2 meetings. And I think that in the process of recognizing like what was challenging about putting together that meeting before we had to face the COVID crisis, I had started to think of some ideas about how we could enhance the relationship between the meetings and the quarter in ways that didn't only rely on the quarterly meetings. Just because we had challenges even getting the people who had come to the planning sessions to commit to coming to the meeting. So we didn't have anybody from any other meetings other than Dallas and Austin who were planning on coming, as far as we know. And so I was sort of already looking at ideas about how we could strengthen the relationship between the meetings in the quarter. And I had kind of had been calling one of my ideas delegation quarterlies, which was basically the notion that we would go and sit with each other at our meetings for worship, and that we would, not just that if we were traveling and happened to be in, like if I was in Austin for the weekend, and if I am in Austin for the weekend, I usually do come and sit with y'all, but that we would also sort of make a concerted effort to visit each other, and thereby establishing these sort of initial fibers of connective tissue between the meetings, because it's strange that we don't see each other more often. And so that was in sort of working backwards from planning a quarterly meeting. I was interested in sort of, what do we do? Well, we just go sit with each other. We see what each other's buildings are like. We see what the tone of the meetings are like. We see how other meetings deal with problems that we have. If we have an issue in our meeting house about people who are hard of hearing not being able to hear vocal ministry, how do other meetings deal with that? We can like learn from each other just by taking the time to sit with each other during our regular meetings for worship. And that is something that we can do without dealing with the challenges of organizing another meeting on our annual calendar. In addition to doing that meeting, like I think that we all want to do that meeting again. And as we kind of sift through how we're gonna learn how to meet in person together again as monthly meetings, then we can sort of address whether or not we're gonna meet as a quarter in person again and all of that. But for now, it's like taking, me coming to this forum meeting is sort of my gesture of like, yes, let's make these connective moments, and let's think about how to just strengthen those relationships and realize that we're not the only meeting on the planet, and we're not the only meeting that deals with X challenge. And there's room to do that between monthly meeting and yearly meetings. Like yearly meeting on Zoom was interesting and a wonderful experience, but there's so much we need to do in between. I think that this is the kind of moment that we take those little steps.
Yeah, Liz, you have your hand up.
We have a responsibility to the yearly meeting once every 4 years to do 2 years of adult program. So during those years, we usually do come together. I think that we should, it's much easier on Zoom to get together. And we're forced to do that at this point. We're really restricted to do that at this point. So, I perfectly agree with you, Greg, that you learn a great deal by seeing the condition and talking to people in other meetings. And you can do that to some extent by talking as well as worshiping. Any one of us can worship with another meeting, the ones that are online at this point. Unfortunately, Dallas has not been doing that, doing an online meeting, which is too bad. They do it by telephone. So I'm not sure that because of some of the people in the meeting who don't have the ability, and Fort Worth is meeting in a park. And I don't know how long that'll last because of course they're very small, but it's going to get cold and that's going to be an issue for them. So I just think I totally agree. And quarterly meeting in my, when we first came here, quarterly meeting was a big deal because we could afford and people had time for families to gather at a what was it, a retreat center that we were associated with. and so it was really fun to have that weekend, especially since that retreat center was within easy driving distance from Austin. So you could go down on Saturday just for Saturday. You didn't have to go for the whole weekend and stay overnight. So I think there's just some potential in our wanting to start this up again. And then there's the responsibility that we'll have, which is better carried out by a broader group of people, to set I think that Arkansas, Oklahoma is doing a great job at this point. They have 3 different places that they meet, and they have those booked for every year at the same time, and they have regular dates. And I don't know what how many people come, but they do it that way. Bayou doesn't have anything quite as regular as that.
I think it's good that Liz brought up the one formal obligation that we have as a quarter, which is to every 4 years, every 6 years, because the other, something like that. Anyway, for 2 years, we need to come up with an adult program that is, a theme for the yearly sessions and that sort of thing. And I think that's coming up on us. Is it not? So
Yeah.
we,
When is it our turn?
like next year.
2022.
2022? Okay. Okay. Well, a little bit of a sigh of relief there. Not 2021. But I think it's, yes, this sense of community in our somewhat broader geographical area that Greg brought up is really important. And so besides that one formal obligation, I think that we need to do whatever, we can try many different ways other than having a formal meeting. Maybe this time of COVID and of Zoom meetings is a time to really think about getting something like that started that stimulates that sense of broader community. One of the things I think quarterly can be for, and one of the reasons, for instance, that Oklahoma, Arkansas is very, very much more, gelled as a quarter than we have been, is because one of the functions of the quarterly meeting, at least in our part of the country, has been to help the very small meetings that make up most of our yearly meeting, to help those very small meetings have some sense of community with other Quakers, which they're very hungry for. And I think one of the things that happens in our quarterly is it's anchored by two of the 3 largest meetings in the yearly meeting. And so, and it's been hard to get friends from the smaller meetings, such as Hill Country and Coastal Bend, to show up at quarterly. I'm not sure I recall this happening in the last 10 years. So it would be exciting, because I did see at least one Hill Country friend at our yearly meeting session on Zoom, who probably wouldn't have shown up if it had been a physical trip. So I think there's a really exciting opportunity in these next month or two to maybe get something going, and something kind of, as Greg suggests, a little bit out of the box from what we've been thinking of as quarterly meeting. And one of the things I would like to stimulate coming out of this forum is some interest in finding out who's interested in Austin, knowing we're not all here right now, to get involved with some folks from San Antonio and Dallas and other meetings on getting that ball rolling again. So I'll be quiet now and see what other folks want to add there.
I know for me, when I, prior to the pandemic, when I was doing at least some traveling, it was a great joy to go and meet with the Raleigh friends or the Palm Beach friends and sit through their worship and then talk to them about what's going on there. So, I think Liz hit on it, and Howard, you did too. I mean, the opportunities, while we may lose some of the sense of community through Zoom a little bit, it kind of also helps us spread our wings in a sense, because we can communicate with people from all over very quickly. So it's exciting to me. The idea of it certainly is exciting to me.
This is sort of a wild idea that I think I mentioned during a last adult religious education meeting, but if we just maybe in like a few weeks sent out, I'm not sure what time San Antonio's meeting for worship online is, but if it's also at 11, it's at 10, okay, that might make it a little trickier since we'd have to shift our times a little bit. If we just all showed up at the same, if we just like merged our meetings on Zoom, that would be, maybe we could do it at 10:30. Yeah. Split the difference, yeah, just as a way to really very easily bring everybody together and have some sort of sense of shared something.
Well, as a member of the Adult Religious Education Committee and looking at James, who is the clerk, we're the ones who plan the forums. It would be a simple matter for us to say, the forum this Sunday will actually be us all going to San Antonio. Because it's at 10 a.m., and that may be kind of cool. And then spread that information amongst other meetings as well. So I could see that. Yeah, Liz.
I mean, there are friends meeting in Lubbock who might be able to join us. That it's a far piece when we're actually traveling, so they don't tend to come. There are friends meeting in Waco, as we said, Georgetown. These are smaller meetings that may really appreciate getting together with us. And I did the history of the pandemic forum for San Antonio that I did, for you guys. I did it for San Antonio too at a different time. They had their forum on Wednesday nights, but I'm wondering, I mean, if the two larger meetings get together, we're really leaving out the smaller meetings unless we do a really concerted effort of letting them know. Because some of the people in Dallas, for instance, who may, use the telephone for worship, may have internet capability to join us. So I think the idea of a quarterly worship, but I also think we should have some sort of a program, and we have so many good people that we could ask to do all kinds of good program. And I'm thinking of something that's, really addresses religious education. So that's, I'm not religious, I'm adult religious education. Some sort of topic that we really all need to be talking about. Where, anyway, I've spoken enough. That's just my thought.
Right. It just also occurs to me that we may not have spread the information very widely, that we have all these meetings that everyone's welcome to join, and there's one place you can go to find the link, and we have videos of the forums and all that. We might have more people interested in taking advantage of those resources if we let them know we're doing it. We might want to think of some good ways to do that.
So I'm hearing kind of two strains here. One is the idea of real active intervisitation of meetings, and then the other one is the idea of an actual kind of quarterly gathering and some programming. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing two things going on here. They're not unrelated, of course, you know, and maybe one comes before the other one, you know, temporarily.
Well, I'm also hearing that too. One of the things I think about, it sounds like, you know, sometimes quarterly meeting sounds like a family reunion with family you've never seen, you know. Yeah, how comfortable does that feel? Yeah, it's like, you know, what will I find when I get there? You know, all those the angsts about that. But if we've already made acquaintances and maybe deepened it beyond, I know that person's name, that face. I think I've seen it. You know, if we have more than that, and a connection there, it's more likely people will want to. It'd be something to look forward to. So, yeah. So I think it really had to be almost not. I wouldn't even say in tandem, though some of it will be in tandem, but maybe a beginning of just making contact and showing up, like you said, Greg. You know, like you did today, and you know, it's real important. Also, additionally, you know, now this is not related to quarterly, but yeah, even little things of just going and visiting other meetings have meant a lot to us. We've gone to the East London meeting a couple or 3 times, and yeah, so even that little connection there makes me feel close to them, even though I haven't seen them for weeks now. So
4 a.m. we got to get up to.
yeah,
do
it's
this,
a little tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're lazy, so, so you like your sleep. So, but anyway, yeah, I think it's that kind of thing, making those connections and building on it.
I think a more likely way to make connections is if we were to participate in joint forums. It's kind of hard to get to know somebody in silent worship. But if we were to hold forums where we had a common topic and people participate, then we can speak, we can get to know each other a little bit. And I think the knowing each other is definitely appropriate and necessary before we try to have a formal quarterly meeting or to the success of that. So I'd like us to consider that idea.
Well, just I love that idea. A logistical question on that front, maybe for Greg. Since you guys worship, do you have forums kind of like this at San Antonio? And what times would those forums be?
They're Wednesday nights.
So historically, we did have forum after meeting on first day, but in Zoom times, we had a very strong sense amongst quite a lot of the members that they were not up to sitting at a desk and doing Zoom all day on Sunday. And that was not a unanimous thing, but like a lot of people were just like, I don't have it. And we have moved our business meeting even to Wednesday nights. So, and it's kind of a long story. We were running an orientation session for people interested in becoming Quakers that was meeting on Wednesday nights at the meeting house. And at the very beginning, we sort of had to move that onto Zoom, and then that sort of stopped. Like it didn't keep going, but we thought, oh, you know what's nice is to think about Wednesday nights as being a space that we can do Quaker stuff. So then it became, we'll have our business meeting on that Wednesday night slot, and then if we're gonna have forums, we'll have forums on the Wednesday night slot. And then there's just been issues with the committees. So I'm on the Religious Education Committee, and we just didn't know what we were doing. And we have just recently kind of gotten ourselves back together where we're meeting on Zoom and trying to plan a forum or two for the next month. And because we had split the responsibility for forums between a few committees. Usually Religious Education had 1 or 2 a month if there were 5 Sundays. And then Peace and Social Concerns and Community Engagement would sort of have one week a month where they had a forum, and then there was no forum on business meeting week. So that's where we're at. We're sort of reserving Wednesday evenings for Quaker midweek stuff, but we're kind of in the process of putting that back together over time. We're also in the process of having people meet on site outside at the meeting house, and trying to figure out how to zoom in on that meeting so that we don't end up having two separate meetings going on. We're kind of a hot mess, but it's fine. But we don't have like a really clear vision right now of what our forum process is like. We're working on what will be an extended forum series about a book called A Call to Radical Faithfulness. I have it right here, by Douglas Quinn. So this is just like a bad PDF of it, but we're working on developing an extended forum series on that, and I'll be glad to send information about that to y'all if there's anybody who wants to read this book with us and join us when we figure out when we're doing that. So that was kind of a long answer to your question.
No, that's really helpful. I guess so that book group is probably then likely, I mean, I know there's still a little up in there, but likely kind of a Wednesday night sort of thing for the book on radical faithfulness.
I'm not sure. The guy that wants to lead it, I think, would prefer to do it when we're back in person and meeting on Sundays after meeting. So I don't know.
I'm wondering, just to throw this in, we've been recording our things like Quakerism 101 and putting the recordings are available on the website. Maybe you'd want to do at least a dry run of that discussion on Zoom, and we could host it, and we could, put the video on the website and that sort of thing. Maybe, as part of our Quakerism 101. Just to throw a notion out there, we don't have to resolve this right now.
Another thing I want to make people aware of is that there's kind of a new Quakerism 101. It's a series of, I think, six very short videos, and a workbook that goes with it. And it's really kind of basic Quakerism for new folks. And it really, have you looked at it, James?
Who did that?
Nadine Hoover.
Yeah, we at our last ARE meeting, we kind of introduced the topic and sort of were thinking of just redoing Quakerism 101 for the spring, kind of pretty completely around that, just to kind of give it some new content. And so, yeah, I should get the book. We're definitely thinking of this next meeting for adult religious education, which I think will be in not next week, but the following week, to sort of really try to look at it more seriously and try to figure out how we would break it into 6 parts and when to do those. And yeah, so
maybe we could ask the whole quarter to participate.
Yeah, awesome. That's a really great idea. Cool. I like that.
Sorry.
Well, Greg said that there's been an initiative in San Antonio for that too.
What was that?
Well, Greg was talking about how San Antonio is also holding sessions for people interested in Quakerism. So maybe
just to put in everyone's bonnet, the whole business of proliferation of Zoom meetings and the Zoom fatigue that we have, like I have 4 completely unrelated Zoom meetings on Sunday, and some Sundays I have 6, and it gets really hard. And I'm wondering if we could kind of encourage our thinking along the lines of doing more shared events and fewer individual events, because locality doesn't matter anymore. We might want to do a shared Quakerism 101 for the entire yearly meeting, really, or something like that.
I wanted to mention, Greg was talking about planning at San Antonio meeting for trying to do some hybrid, what we're calling hybrid meeting, where you would have some people participating in Zoom and some in person. We're working on that also, Greg, and we found some resources from Great Britain that I'd be happy to share with you if I had your email, where they've tackled this in many meetings and have a lot of interesting information. It also points out some of the areas that we should be working together rather than each meeting trying to solve these problems on their own.
Yeah.
My email address is just my name right there at Gmail.
Okay, thanks.
Well, friends, we have about, looks like maybe 7 minutes left before we need to kind of transition out of forum. We typically end about 10 till. And there's been so much good discussion around all of this and some really interesting ideas. I'm wondering if I have permission to start a circular kind of round robin email, a thread to those who are attending here. I think I have everyone's email. I may not have, and Jonathan, I'm not sure I have yours, or if you're interested in getting that email too, just to kind of help help us continue this discussion and maybe maybe even begin some planning. And my fantasy is that we would have some sort of a get together identified as our quarter very soon via Zoom or some other way. However that, there's all these ideas that have come up in this discussion. I would like to see that, but I can start an email now that we have this recorded and I see who all is on this call, plus the other usual suspects that aren't here today, who've been involved in quarterly meeting planning. I might do that if friends think that's a good place to start or to jump off from here.
Well, the only thing I think about with that is, do we, we had the other suggestion of trying to begin meeting each other, unless,
No,
maybe.
There's a short,
Yeah.
people don't have to type.
Anyway, I'm not sure if that is helpful.
You just seem to shout at
I
it.
wonder how that could be included in this round robin, if that's what it is.
I think we could, I hope that I would accurately kind of summarize all the different things we brought up in it.
Oh, of course.
Greg, do you have any thoughts, since you're the San Antonio guy here?
Well, I had a few kind of last thoughts that I wanted to bring up. I really like the idea of us trying to have some kind of joint meeting that, like James brought up earlier. Frequently we have some kind of weird collective action problems, and that's not foreign to Quaker decision-making process. So I don't know exactly how we push that into a solid plan, but I'm excited about that possibility. I think that people in San Antonio would be into that, whether that's during the 10 o'clock hour or the 11 o'clock hour on a Sunday or on a Wednesday evening, or if it's in a forum setting or a meeting for worship setting. Those are things that we can work on, but I'm interested. I think one of the hopes that I had for the meeting that we were going to have back in March was that we would do some discernment on how to set a regular date for a quarterly meeting, that if we had a regular date, there's sort of no telling how much that would do for the fact of the meeting happening. And it's just that because we don't have it and we have this collective action problem, or what's sort of arbitrary about trying to set what that date is at this point, we're just kind of like at one of those moments where I don't know how we make that decision. But I think if we had a regular date, and we had our eye on this today, like we had our eye on this weekend, I think, because we were, at least with some of the people I had been talking to, it was that we would have our meeting that we try to do every year in the fall in October, so that we were a little closer to yearly meeting as opposed to trying to meet within a month or two before yearly meeting. So I'll put that out there as just y'all being members of this meeting and members of this quarter, like I'm interested in us finding a regular date. And then I also felt like we had a real communication problem because there's no good way to communicate with the quarterly. If there's an email list that is like the clerks of all the meetings of the quarter and the people who are representatives to the quarter, if the meetings have representatives, or the people who volunteered to be part of it, we start to have kind of an amorphous number of people who are on some kind of email list, and then that email list isn't really appropriate for making announcements for that, you know. So we have kind of a weird challenge, I think, in the communication end of things when it comes to like how we disseminate information specifically about quarterly meeting or quarterly business. So I don't know the answer to that question either, but it's something that I found challenging leading up to that meeting, being a big player in canceling that meeting and trying to figure out how to let people know that that was the case. Went down to the meeting house and like hammered a note on the gate that said, "I'm so sorry, this meeting's been canceled if you didn't hear about it." Like,
Thank you, Martin.
I'm so sorry. So those are things, but I'm really heartened and so glad to meet with y'all this morning. And if we find it difficult to make the connections on how to make this next step of having some kind of joint meeting, like I'm around. My email address is just my name there, Greg Keeler @gmail, and Howard has it, and I'll talk to Jim Spicker.
I'm the communications person who kind of holds the list of clerks of the monthly meetings for the yearly meeting, and that list is we try to keep it as private as possible, but that list should be. Howard, you're the clerk of quarterly meeting, right? Because we haven't. I mean, you were.
No, someone else is the clerk. I was just looking at the minutes this morning. I am technically the recording clerk.
Okay. Well,
but our terms ended last year. So, but you know. Yeah.
So anybody left in the yearly meeting?
So I think that's what we need is we need to get our communications in order, because you shouldn't be struggling, Greg, to find those names, even though it is a challenge to keep that up to date, but particularly within the quarter. And I think most quarterly meetings have they depend on the monthly meetings to spread the word that a quarterly meeting is coming up. And so it's the clerk of the monthly meeting that is responsible for that usually. So, and you know, that in the smaller monthly meetings, that's really where it stands. So, so I can get that list to Howard and he can spread it wherever, but with just our quarterly meeting clerks.
Yeah, I don't want to get into a complicated discussion of mailing lists, but Liz and I have our fingers in both pies. I do a lot of the stuff for FMA and she does a lot of the stuff for SCYM. So if you have questions or concerns or ideas, I mean, we're just likely people to maybe know the answer. So, you know, keep us in mind.
Yeah.
Thank you. Friends, it's a few minutes before worship starts. So I guess we'll need to wind down here and then settle into worship at 11. I will I've noted everyone who's on this call, and I will get an email out to them and to others who've been involved. And Jonathan, I don't know if you're interested in being involved in this or not. I see you listening there. If I can find your email or you want to get it to me, we can.
Great to put it on the chat.
Or you can put it on the chat.
Yeah.
If you're
And
comfortable.
we'll have the video of the session posted.
Okay, I see your email, Jonathan. Thank you. Okay.
And I put the
So,
link over there in the chat.
Thank you. All right. Anyway, friends, thanks for a great discussion, and we'll be following up on this, and hopefully we'll have the ball rolling real soon here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank y'all. So nice to see everybody.
Good to
Yeah,
see
glad
you.
you could come.
We hope we'll see you at the Rise meeting.
Yeah, if you want to join in at 12. not wanting to
I might call back in.
Okay, we'll
Yeah.
see you. Bye. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah.